This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Monday Mashup, October 29th. It is, of course, a Monday. That's why we call it the Monday Mashup. And this is Detroit Sports Podcast Network that you are listening to, the best place to get all of the information on Detroit sports, all the best takes, all the best opinions. This is your spot on demand. And I kind of want to just jump right into things today. I am your host, of course, Shea Norling. Follow me on Twitter if you like, at Norling Shea. Get my takes on the go, I suppose. But I just want to dive right in. And I am alone today, forewarning. It's going to be me ranting, but I have some things set up that I want to talk about because it was a crazy week in sports. So many things happened, especially here locally, so I kind of want to touch on all of it. And what I wanted to do was start with Snacks Harrison and kind of look at that trade. We have a game worth of film on Snacks now in a Lions uniform in Honolulu blue. We saw him play today against the Seahawks, yesterday as you're listening to this, or whenever you're listening to this. We saw him play Sunday against the Seahawks. We saw Snacks, instant difference maker against the run, I thought. Instant difference maker. And I was hoping that I would be able to frame this through the lens of, look, the Lions are 4-3. You just beat Seattle at home. You're moving forward. You got Bears-Vikings coming up, both on the road. If you split those, you're looking at being 5-4 coming into the 10th week of the season. You're looking at a beautiful situation where the NFC North is wide open because of the Packers. They lost to the Rams. I was hoping that we'd be able to frame this so that I could go, look, you brought in Snacks. You made a move that you haven't made in the Bob Quinn era, that an elite team would make, and you went and made that move and you brought him in, and now all of a sudden you're going to have a shot at sitting at 5-4 going into week 10, week 11, and you're going to have that opportunity to really compete and win this division. I was hoping to frame it like that. I did not get my wish. I think the season's lost. At 3-4, I think, even if you split these next two games where you go on the road at Chicago, on the road at Minnesota, you come out of that, you're 4-5 in a division where, the Packers are no good, sure. You look at the Bears, and they're a maybe. The Vikings are starting to look like the team we thought the Vikings were. And I think you look at the Lions now, and it sucks to say, but guess what? They went out, and they did exactly what everybody thought they wouldn't, especially with Snacks Harrison. They thought, look, you went and got Snacks. You went and got an elite defensive tackle who's going to stop the run, and we have this opportunity now where we can really snuff same old Lions. It's over. It's dead. And they went out and they were the same old Lions. And I think the season's lost. I don't see any other way to put it. And I know maybe that's not fair, but I thought the season was over at 1-3. Then they shut me up coming back to 3-3. And really, we all should have seen this coming. Maybe it's on us. Because a week ago, I sat in on this podcast and said, look, the Lions have absolutely no reason not to go for the division now. You're 3-3. You have the bad Seahawks team coming into town. You made Russell Wilson look like a god today. He had a perfect passer rating, 14-17, 220 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. I mean, you let Russell Wilson just throw all over you, and he only had to complete 14 passes to do it. That's how good that guy is, for one. But for two, what was going on with the defense? You had decent coverage on 2 touchdowns, but you can't finish the play. And that's kind of the problem this year, is a failure to finish plays. In the past with the Lions, it's been, look, they can't finish games. This year, they can't finish plays. And it concerns me, because I wanted to go, look, you stopped the run. You did well against the run, which today you didn't. Again, I wanted to come in and go, look, you got Snacks Harrison. Things are looking up. The schedule is not that unbearably difficult. It looks a lot worse now. On the road at Minnesota next week. Minnesota opens as a 6.5-point favorite, and they haven't even, as I'm recording this, they haven't even played their game this week yet. You got Lions at Bears the week after. It's an outdoor game, early November, Chicago, weather. Look at Stafford's numbers on the road, outside. Think you're looking at trouble in that game. You got Panthers, a team that's going to be fighting in that NFC South, coming into town after that. Bears, Rams, chalk that up. Then you get the easy part, Cardinals, Bills, but then Vikings, Packers. And I think we're now at a point where, yeah, you went and got Damon Harrison, and I thought, look, this is a team that all of a sudden just boosted their potential win total from 8 to 10, and you can make the playoffs. And then you put up a boner of a performance against the Seahawks. And I think that's it. I think that lost the season. Because I'll tell you what, they came out and they looked completely unprepared for what they were about to face. I mean, they did. And they in the post-game comments, they said, Russell Wilson's going to boot, and he's going to try to throw on you, you know what he's going to do. If you know what he's going to do, what the hell was that? I think there's got to be guys. Look, you look at the Snacks deal. Also you look at when Snacks was on the field. In the first quarter, he missed the first, I think, 3 plays, and then came out. Seahawks ran the ball twice with Snacks clogging the middle, and he was amazing against the instant difference maker against the run. Instant difference maker. When he was in there, the Seahawks running game could not get going. The problem was he wasn't in there enough. And look, I know. He's brand new. He's got to learn the ins and outs of the defense. He's got to learn Patricia's scheme, yada, yada, yada. Dude, results play. Yeah, I know he's a bigger guy. I know he's not a stamina guy, but results play. Why the hell are you bringing him out on rushing downs when you can't stop the run without him? And then every time he rotates back in, no issue. I think at halftime, there was a stat at halftime that they were just... And I'll pull it up for accuracy, but I remember going on Twitter and seeing a stat and thinking, oh my goodness, somebody let Matt Patricia know that Snacks Harrison has to be on the field against the run on rushing downs. Just needs to be. Here, this is from Justin Rogers on Twitter. Harrison was on the field for 9 rushing plays. The Seahawks in the first half. The Seahawks gained 29 yards, including 10 on an end around to a wide receiver. So take Harrison out on that. Snacks is not going to be that involved in the stopping the end around. That's kind of on the DBs. When Snacks was not on the field, 10 runs for 66 yards. We're talking almost 40 more yards in the first half when Snacks was not on the field compared to when he was. Somebody tell Patricia. That to me is easy. I get it. He's new and you need him to understand the defense, but there are easy results when he's in there. How much of this scheme does he really have to understand? Clog the gap. We know what Seattle does. They're probably going to run a lot of zone scheme runs. Just clog the gaps. He's a defensive mismatch. He's a monster because he's 350 pounds, not fat. He's a monster. He's a nightmare matchup for any interior lineman on rushing downs. Why wasn't he involved more? You let the Seahawks run all over you, except for when Snacks was on the field. So guess what? Snacks needs to be on the field more often in first and second downs. Just needs to. There's no reason Chris Carson should be getting 9-yard gains on first down because you know what? Snacks isn't coming in on second and short, or he'll be there on third and short if you let it happen, but on second and short, it's not happening. And that's where Russell Wilson made his money today. I tell you, I got issues with this team today. I got issues with the coaching staff. I got issues with the personnel that they sent out there. I got issues with guys. It looked like they weren't ready to play. And in the postgame, the comments were, hey, were you guys on autopilot all week? And pretty much everybody was like, yeah, we kind of were. I got a problem with Amir Abdullah returning punts and kickoffs. What the hell? How many times we got to read this book before you just go, look, Amir, you don't have it. See ya. I remember preseason saying this. Preseason. Amir Abdullah, I think it was week 3 preseason, fumbled a kick and lost the ball. You know what you do when you fumble a kick and you lose the ball? See ya. When you have a history of doing that, when you've never displayed any type of ball control in your entire career as a Lion, how the hell can you justify putting him out there to run the kicks back? Look, I get it, you don't have Jamal Agnew. Find someone else. How the hell are you going to justify letting Amir Abdullah run it out of the end zone? Force him to fair catch it. Don't let him come out of the end zone. If he does, he's cut. And tell you what, he should be cut. It's embarrassing, this guy. And that's part of what handicapped your team, because a big problem today was flat out abandoning the run game. You have the best running back this city has seen since Barry Sanders. You have the best running attack in the Bob Quinn era, in the JBC era. It's the first time that the Lions have had any type of ground game since Reggie Bush had a 100-yard performance. And what'd they do? They handed it off to him 8 times. 8. The final handoff to Amir Abdullah came with 14 minutes and 28 seconds left in the third quarter. I get it. You're down 2 scores. You're pressing. You need to make plays. Maybe running the ball isn't the way to go. But if you look at the post-game comments, again, look at the post-game comments. They talked about Seattle's front 7 and D-line like it was just stifling. You didn't even try. 13 rushing attempts total. Threw the ball 40 times. 13 rushing attempts total. Part of that is because Abdullah couldn't return a kick and fumbled the ball away and gave Seattle a touchdown and put you behind the 8 ball so that you couldn't really grind out a running game. The other part of that is find out how to put the runs in. Because I don't care if you're down that much. You should have handoffs after the 14-28 mark in the third quarter. You should not be able to go an entire half of football without handing off to your feature back. Because what happens when you do that? You become one-dimensional. Yeah, the defense didn't put him in a good spot either. Didn't finish plays in the end zone. Had good coverage, but just didn't get the ball out. There was the weird challenge, sure. But for the most part, corners, the secondary has to do better than that. They just have to. Tease Tabor, dude, it's year 3. When are you going to figure it out? Maybe you just don't have it. And I know it's like, well, what are you going to do about it? They can't get any better. Yeah, well, I'll tell you, go and draft somebody. Look, we had big things to say when we went, look, they drafted a running game, went and got offensive linemen, went and got a running back. Good stuff. And what happened this year? Running game came up. Thank God. But what did we say about that draft too? Where nothing, no defensive help. That's why Snacks Harrison was so big. Except it doesn't matter when you can't stop the pass either. And when he's not on the field. I had a problem with the way this game was coached, if you can't tell. I don't want to go so far as to say it was like a Michigan State coaching job, but it was problematic. And the players didn't put themselves in good spots either. But I'll tell you, at some point, you got to look at the quarterback too. I know he's been hot. I know he was behind the 8 ball. But you can't turn the ball over twice in the fourth quarter when you're down 2 scores. You can't. You can't. You can't fumble that ball away. You can't throw that interception. You can't. I know he maybe gets an unfair rap because there have been personnel issues. There have been other problems with this team. It hasn't always been on Stafford. But, buddy, it's year 10, dude. It's time. It's time to come out and start winning games, Matthew. It's time to start winning games. Because, you get paid $150 million. Yeah, I was on board with that. Because, look, he makes you playoff viable. If you make the playoffs, the past 2 times you've made the playoffs, there's exactly one reason, Matthew Stafford. It's the only reason. You want to argue in 2014 it was the defense? Okay. Matt Stafford had a big part in that too. This year, he has not been good in closing out games. He hasn't. You want to point to the Patriots game? Well, guess what? I can't take a ton from that because they were missing their best pass rusher in Trey Flowers. They were missing a starting safety in Pat Chung, and they had Gronk on one leg, and there was no Edelman. Can't point to that game and go, wow. If you play that game again today with the Patriots at full health, probably looks a lot different. Packers came to town. What happened? Devontae Adams didn't play. Geronimo Allison was hurt. You got guys out there 50, 60%. Aaron Rodgers on one leg. Compromised team. Horrible defense. Mike McCarthy, I think, has been absolutely abysmal this year. Also, you needed Mason Crosby to miss 5 kicks just to win that game. They haven't really looked good at any point along the way. You want to argue the game against Miami? Okay, Brock Osweiler. I mean, come on. You gave up, 150 yards to Kenyon Drake? It's time for these guys to start playing better and to start being held accountable because this is ridiculous. And you give Stafford all this money and you have a fan base that refuses to go after him because he's the best quarterback this franchise has ever seen. But, God, it's time to start playing when it counts. And I don't want to come down too hardly on Stafford because defense didn't put him in a good spot today. They didn't. Amir Abdullah didn't put him in a good spot today. But you can't fumble in the fourth quarter. You can't throw that pick in the fourth quarter when you're trying to engineer a comeback. And I know that's where you've made your money, the comeback kid. Maybe that's not the way to play anymore. Because when you're relying on one good quarter of offense, if that one good quarter never comes, you're not winning the game. That's where we are with this guy. I tell you, I had high expectations this year for the Lions. I thought Matt Patricia coming in, I thought you had a chance for this to be the best head coach that this team has had in decades. I thought you had an opportunity when they went out and drafted a running game to really put it to teams. And you did put it to teams with the running game in the past couple weeks. But you abandoned it today. And part of that, again, is Amir Abdullah. And again, why is he on the team? I think that's coaching error. Borderline malfeasance, sending Amir Abdullah into the end zone. We know what this guy does. He fumbles. It's a track record. I don't got a whole lot else to say about the Lions. I'm out on this team. A week ago, I was starting to just kind of dig back into it. I was starting to kind of think, look, man, this team, they got a shot. The division is set up for them. And now after today, I'm out. I'm not buying back in either. I'm out. They could win 8 games. They could go to 8-4. I'm out. I don't buy it. I can't. I've seen this too much from them. Yeah, it's same old Lions. There's one thing that gives me a lot of hope from what went down in the NFL on Sunday, and this actually brings me joy, is Jameis Winston went out through all those picks and got benched. That gives me joy. Seeing bad guys do bad and then get benched makes me happy. And this stat made me happy too. I thought this was maybe the funniest thing I had heard all week. Jameis Winston, in week 8, he had been suspended the first 3 games. He's had a bye week, and he only played half of 2 other games. That's it. So in sum total, he's played in, quick math, 2 total football games this season. And he is second in the NFL in interceptions. How bad do you got to be for that to be a stat? You can play, it's week 8, you've played in 2 total games, and you are second in the league in interceptions. That's such a level of commitment to throwing the ball to the other team. I think you should be commended for it. I think they need to make an award for him. Anyway, Michigan State, Purdue. This is another game I don't have a ton to say about. I think it was a good thing for the seniors that they got out. It's good for that team. They've had a lot of adversity with all the injuries and all the other, look, Lewerke went down. You had the best wide receiver core on paper in the entire Big Ten, and that didn't go well because Felton Davis got hurt a week ago. Cody White's been hurt. You got Darius Stewart's been hurt. You got a lot of guys who just injuries have plagued this team. You've had an offensive line that's a revolving door, and you had a Purdue team that game day picked a clean sweep. Purdue was going to come in, kick your ass. They just manhandled Ohio State a week before. They're coming into East Lansing to get a beaten down Sparty, and they're going to just beat the brakes off them. That's pretty much what I thought was going to happen. Purdue's offense is legit with Randall Moore. I thought Purdue was coming in, and they were just going to beat the brakes off you. And they didn't. Michigan State hung in there. They fought. They played a really good football game. I thought it was good for those guys. I thought it was good for that coaching staff. Does not change how I feel about Michigan State this year. Mark D'Antonio's got to start being held accountable. Mark D'Antonio needs to do better. The assistant coaches need to do better. The offense still didn't look great, but I will say this. Rocky Lombardi did not look that bad. In fact, he looked pretty capable of guiding a college offense, a Big Ten offense. And that begs the question, why in the hell was Brian Lewerke rolled out against Michigan with a bum shoulder when Rocky Lombardi looked that capable against Purdue? And look, maybe it's an indictment on Rocky Lombardi that Lewerke was allowed to start injured against Michigan. But, hey, look, anything would have been better than 5 for 25 with all of those third down passes going deep into the stands. So, to me, I don't know how much more from this coaching staff I can take, where you say, look, 60% of Lewerke is better than 100% of Rocky Lombardi, and then he goes out against Purdue on Saturday and proves that absolutely wrong. I don't know. I think Michigan State is kind of in flux right now. They're a really confusing team to me. The one thing that I am for certain from this game is the SEC West, Big Ten West, excuse me. The Big Ten West sucks. Absolutely awful. I mean, MAC level bad. You got a Wisconsin team that no one believes in. I don't care where they're ranked. They went into Ann Arbor and got rocked. They lost at home to BYU. You have a Purdue team that looks incredible on offense against Ohio State and then comes to East Lansing and cannot move the football. Northwestern is the Big Ten West leader. You have an Iowa team that choked away against a mediocre Penn State. I think this division is MAC bad. I mean, I really think if you get the best of the MAC and put them into the Big Ten West, like think about this. Where would Utah State finish if they played in the Big Ten West? I'm hard-pressed to think that they would be as bad as some of these teams, as Nebraska has been. I mean, good Lord. This division sucks. And I think it's going to be bad for the Big Ten. A little more on that because I want to preview briefly Michigan and Penn State before I get into the last topic I want to do this week that was kind of inspired by some of the other things that went on this week that were not as directly related to sports, but kind of peripherally. Michigan and Penn State, I kind of am guarding myself on this game because if you look at stats the past few years, Michigan plays really, 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 really well up to and including the Michigan State game. Now, that's usually where they lose the past 11 years, but I digress. Post-Michigan State game, typically the schedule gets a little tougher. You start playing the Penn States, you get the Ohio States. Post-Michigan State game, Michigan the past few years has a losing record. So I'm guarding myself a little bit because I think it's easier to look at this game and go, Michigan gets Penn State at home. They're on the revenge tour. Ton of emotion. You're coming off a rival win. You had a bye week. There's no way. But I'm guarding myself because Penn State, while not a great team, is still an 8-9 win team that you kind of have to take a little bit seriously. They have Trace McSorley, probably the best quarterback in the division in the Big Ten. If you want to make an argument for Dwayne Haskins, you could, but really, McSorley's likely the best quarterback in the conference. I'm wondering if there is any potential for a letdown for Michigan in this game. And I think the game's going to be closer than people are saying initially. I don't have the spread in front of me. Let me get that. But I don't think that this game is going to be as wide open as a lot of Michigan fans think it's going to be, where they're just going to roll over Penn State. The way that they rolled over Wisconsin and the way that they rolled over Michigan State. And I do want to guard myself from thinking the revenge tour is going to just light up Penn State. But I don't believe in Penn State at all. With all of that said, I don't believe in Penn State at all. I don't know if you watched the Penn State game this weekend, but Penn State and Iowa could have easily won that game. They gave that game away. And I don't think Iowa's any good either. That's where I struggle with this Penn State team coming into Michigan, trying to get a win. I think that Michigan is safe here. But my question, because the Big Ten West is so bad, any of that Wisconsin win probably doesn't look great at the end of the year. Because Wisconsin, to me, stinks. You know, you look at the other wins, Western Michigan, okay. SMU, okay. You have the Notre Dame loss, and, you know, the way college football works, quality losses are almost better than wins. But I think you look at this, and I wonder if the competitiveness of the Big Ten and the level that it hasn't lived up to the expectations we had for it. You know, Michigan State we thought was going to be a playoff team. They are not. You know, Ohio State we thought was going to be another juggernaut. They are not. Michigan lost to Notre Dame with their backup quarterback. I mean, you look at what's going on, and I just wonder, the spread, by the way, Michigan-Penn State, 10.5. I do think 10.5 is a lot of points for me in this game to take Michigan, but I digress. I think that going to the playoff, going into Michigan winning this conference and Michigan going to the college football playoff, I think that there could be an issue with perceived down level of play in the Big Ten and getting Michigan in. I do worry about that. And I know Michigan fans going, there's no way. If they win out, they have to let us in. That's what people said about Ohio State a year ago. They didn't. They opted for 2 SEC teams instead. I think Michigan fan, this weekend, once Michigan-Penn State's done, once you're done beating the hell out of Penn State, if that's the way this goes down, you better turn your eyes to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Because I'll tell you what, if LSU beats Alabama, you're in trouble. The odds that Alabama loses more than one game are about 0. And if LSU beats Alabama, they will have passed the test of both Georgia and Alabama. And they probably are winning out too. And I can tell you, if last year is any indication, an Alabama that is not an SEC champion is going to be let in because, 1, they're Alabama. 2, they have the pedigree. They've been there every year. 3, they're Ala-freaking-Bama. And the SEC champion is going to get let in. So what does that leave? Oklahoma, probably. The Pac-12 stinks. Oklahoma, actually, the Big 12 might also get shut out because Clemson, definitely. You get an Alabama team, you get an LSU team, you get a Clemson team, Notre Dame. There's nowhere for me to fit the Big 10 in there. That's just the way that the committee acts. I know it's not right. I know this is why people go, maybe we should do six-team tournament. Get every Power 5 champion in. Do you really want a Power 5 champion out of the Pac-12? I know 6 teams sounds flashy because you get to go, well, my team finished, they were in the 5 and 6. We played a New Year's Six Bowl. We should have been in the playoff. I think 6 teams, 8 teams, it all kind of cheapens the level of excellence required to get to the college football playoff. It makes those regular season games less important. Right now, every single regular season college football game is a playoff game, effectively. That game against Notre Dame, it may turn out that loss is what keeps you out. Or Michigan and Ohio State, that game means everything because 6 teams don't get in, only 4 do. In the event that we got what we thought we were going to, Michigan and Ohio State clash in Columbus, both undefeated. If 6 teams get in, both those teams are probably already punching their ticket. It cheapens that game. A 4-team playoff requires you to be excellent for 12 weeks in the eyes of the committee. That's what it does. And I think adding a 5 and 6 teams, 7 and 8 teams cheapens that excellence, and it dimmers the importance of those regular season games, those late regular season games. Alabama, LSU, make no mistake, LSU is playing to get into the playoff this weekend. They just are. It's the way it is. If LSU loses against Alabama, kiss it goodbye. That's a playoff game for LSU. If 8 teams get in, it's not. It's not. Because they have the win against Georgia. There's a shot. There's still a path. If 8 teams get in, there's a path for LSU, even if they lose, because their schedule will have been so good. I think it's fun when your team is on the outside and you go, man, we should have got in. But I do think that lessening the number of teams that get into the playoff cheapens a little bit of that experience. Okay, that's what I got on Michigan. I do think Michigan beats Penn State. If I'm being honest, I want to guard myself on this game a little bit, but if I'm being really honest, I don't think Penn State's that great. I think Michigan's defense has shown a level of tenacity they haven't last year. I think Don Brown saying he wakes up every single morning thinking about this Penn State game because he coached it so poorly last year. I think just this is a perfect storm for Michigan to go and just stop that opponent. And then it's smooth sailing to Ohio State. And with Nick Bosa not playing and the offensive line being the situation that it is in Ohio State, Dobbins can't even find a lane to run. I think Michigan wins that game too. If we're picking it right here, their fate is in their own hands. But I'm telling you, Michigan fan, keep an eye on LSU, Alabama, because that's the game. If LSU wins, that's the game that'll keep you out. All right, the last thing I wanted to get on, not totally sports related, but it's something I woke up this morning and I fired off a tweet. I kept thinking about it, and it stuck with me all day. It's really, really bothered me because self-awareness from our president of the United States was at an absolute all-time low. I don't want to get into the stuff that went down in Pittsburgh, but I want to say this. Our president should acknowledge it more than he did. Our president should show more in trying to fix the issue than he does. I think the direct quote from him was, "The world we live in is a violent one." Kind of just matter-of-factly put it out there that, hey, these things are going to happen, and we just kind of have to get over it. 11 people are dead. And you just kind of have to get over it. And then he fired off a tweet last night criticizing the Dodgers for their play in the World Series. Like, that is of any level of importance to the executive branch of the government, how well the Dodgers are managing their game in the World Series. He was angry that Rich Hill got pulled. Why do you care that much? 1. 2, self-awareness at an all-time low. Absolute all-time low. Because this is the guy who promotes people who tell LeBron James to shut up and dribble, who tell Kevin Durant to shut up and dribble, who tell sports journalists to stick to sports, and who tell athletes to stick to sports. This is a guy who has no idea how big of a hypocrite he is. You don't get to tell people who cover sports. You don't get to tell athletes who play these sports, who play in these games. You don't get to criticize managers on their craft. And then the second that they turn and criticize you, you say, You better stick to sports. And then you fall in line behind the senseless people in the media that spout off about, well, guys like Colin Kaepernick that make millions, or Meryl Streep, they should just leave it alone. They're not in touch with the common man in America. Like that has anything to do with it. I mean, come on. What are we talking about? Stick to sports. Don't you dare tell me to stick to sports. Nobody tell me that. Nobody. Nobody should tell LeBron that. Nobody should say that to anyone. You want to know what you're saying? I don't know what the job is that somebody who says stick to sports comes and says, hey, your job is to cover sports. You should only talk about sports. Buddy, I live in America. I work in America. I pay taxes in America. I love America. I want America to do well. And just because my job is to play a sport or to cover a sport or to do whatever it is, that doesn't lessen the point that I am an American citizen. It does not take away from my right to speak on my opinion on this country. You know, anybody that ever said Colin Kaepernick is being paid $19 million a year to throw a ball, he shouldn't be able to talk about what's going on in the government. He shouldn't be able to protest. He makes $20 million to throw a ball. Yeah, he also lives here, works here, is a citizen here, pays taxes here. He has every right to do what he wants to do. And say it. You're a mechanical engineer. I don't want to hear a word out of your mouth about sports or politics anymore. The only thing I want to hear from you are whatever mechanical engineers are talking about. Seriously, tell me about the new engine in the Corvette, because that's all I trust you on. That's what that argument sounds like. It's that ridiculous. Bobby, the structural engineer down the street, said stick to sports. Guess what, Bobby? I don't want to hear about sports or politics out of your mouth ever again, structural engineer. I want to hear about bridges exclusively. That's how stupid that sounds. Imagine going, you don't have any right to comment on politics in this country that you live, work, and pay taxes in because you're a professional and you get paid to play a sport. Or you make so much money to star in movies, you don't get to talk about what goes on in this country. No, say what you mean. The only reason that you don't want these people speaking up is because you don't agree with what they're saying. That's it. I could go one further, because the only time stick to sports or shut up and dribble gets said is when it's directed at somebody who is black. You think if Tom Brady came out and stuff, Tom Brady had a MAGA hat in his locker, people didn't jump down him like they do Colin Kaepernick, or LeBron, or Kevin Durant, or Steph Curry. I'll be damned if Donald Trump thinks he can tweet about the Dodgers pulling Rich Hill and what a disaster that was. But the second anybody in any sport spurns him by not going to the White House or by commenting on their disagreement with his politics, he can come out and say stick to sports. Shut up. I wish you would have stuck to real estate. I think it's absurd. And if anybody says that to me, anybody says stick to sports, don't put your nose into politics. Shut up. I work here and pay taxes here the same as everybody else. I have every right to say this. I have every right to say whatever I want about it. It's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment to the First Amendment. It's an embarrassment to our Constitution. It's an embarrassment to our country, and it's an embarrassment to our citizens that people think you can censor thoughts just because of somebody's occupation or interests. Stick to sports is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, and if it's ever come out of your mouth, I hope that every straw you ever get to every drink you ever drink has little holes poked in it. I hope you stub your toe on your coffee table every day for the rest of your life if you have ever said stick to sports. Because that's just an absolutely ridiculous thing to say. It's a horrifyingly stupid argument. And I can't imagine what type of ignorant brain has that thought occupying it. Cannot imagine. Could not be more plain and simple what these people want to say. Shut up because you're black. Shut up because I don't agree with you. Just admit it. Like, just be honest about it. You want to say something that's stupid. Just be honest. Say what you mean. We all know what it really means anyway. We can all read between the lines. So just say it. Last thing I want to send this out on, my last thought, a couple weeks, we have an opportunity to hopefully invoke some level of change in this country. I think it's incredibly important that every one of us gets out and votes. Please do that. Thank you for listening to Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Thank you so much for supporting us. Again, you can find me on Twitter at Norling Shea, NORLINGSHEA. You can find the Detroit Sports Podcast on Twitter at Detroit Podcast. Also, go to our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. You can donate, keep us going. We appreciate every single one of you listeners so much. Thank you for listening to me. I appreciate this opportunity to come on here every week and talk to you guys. I don't want to just sound like I'm droning, but really, voting is so important. So please do that as well. November 6th, get registered, get out there, get that taken care of. Do the business. Be an American citizen. Let's go. Get the people that think stick to sports is acceptable the hell out of these offices, because it's not. Thanks for listening, guys. Love you.